Welcome in, everybody. It is First Seed Sports here. Kyle, Mike, Zach, and Dante. And we are back with another Start Sit. This time it is Week 6 edition. This week we are starting to experience some actual scheduled buys, not just some of those impromptu buys. So things are going to get a little hairy this week. So that's why we're here. As always, we got you starts and sits of the week. So without further ado, Kyle, let's kick it off. Who's your start of the week?
My start of the week is good old David Montgomery. They face the Carolina Panthers this week, who just so happens to be dead last in fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. And then on top of that, since Tariq Cohen has gone down, David Montgomery's snap percentage, where he's on the field, has shot up to 80%. I think he was middling around 60 before then. And his targets have doubled. He's had 6 and 8 in the past 2 weeks. And to be involved in the passing game more against a very bad Carolina rush defense, I think he could smash this week.
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit on that. I had David Montgomery in a bunch of my leagues this year. I'm in 6 currently. I had him in 3. And I traded him in 2 because before Tariq Cohen got hurt, his passing game or his usage in the passing game just wasn't there. But obviously with Cohen going down, he's proving himself now. And that Carolina team is beat up right now. So I'm expecting a huge game from Montgomery this week.
Yeah, I like David Montgomery, especially because Foles likes to check down with him. And they don't have another back that can make plays like Montgomery. There's not really much I could say besides what you guys said, but I will say that in terms of the defense that the Bears are going up against, they tend to let up a lot of points towards running backs, especially in the passing game. So I expect to see a lot of catches from Montgomery in that regard.
Yeah, I love the start of the week also here. I think he's trending in the right direction for the last couple weeks, especially since Tariq Cohen has gone down. And I think that Matt Nagy is finally realizing that he has a 3-down back on his hands. I think Montgomery is the full package, and given the right workload, I think he's going to reap fantasy rewards. So I love the start of the week, Kyle. Okay, let's move on. Next, we have Mike. Mike, who's your breakout of the week?
So I'm going with Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford so far this year has not lived up to what I thought he would be personally. I had him in my top 10 quarterbacks, and I believe that he's outside of that right now. I think that playing Jacksonville right now, they are in the top 5 and giving up points to quarterbacks. So I think that Stafford, I'm fingers crossed, sees his first game over 30 fantasy points this year. I think this is a breakout week for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think Stafford's just waiting for that big day to come, and Jacksonville is the prime defense for it to happen against. I know, let's see, last week, Deshaun Watson had his best game of the season against them. I know Fitzpatrick went off against them a couple weeks ago, and I think this Jacksonville defense is not going to contain Stafford as well as the other defenses have. And I think we'll see the startable week out of Stafford this week for him.
See, so what the fans don't realize, guys, is that these guys over here have a complete hard-on for Matt Stafford and will believe he's going to be a top 5 QB, like, going into it. I don't know why. I really don't understand. I see the games. I don't see like any Aaron Rodgers or anything like that. But yeah, Matt Stafford this week obviously is going to be a great start just because of the Jaguars. Like, who can like it's the Jaguars? But just in general, like, I'm not in the Matt Stafford train. I got to be honest. I'm probably the only one that's going to say that. He's still a great quarterback. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm not like putting them with like, my guy Russ. He's not Russell Wilson. He's not Watson. You know what I mean? So, this week I can understand why you would start him, but any other week, if I have any of the other top elite guys, I'm going with those guys for sure.
Before you go, Zach, I just want to say we're one of us is a Lions fan. Kyle is a Lions fan. But besides that, Stafford, before he got hurt last year, was averaging the third highest out of any QB, I believe, at like 18.4 games, something like that. So that's why we were so high on him. But I see what you're saying, Dante. Of course, you can't put him in a category with Russ or Rodgers or anybody like that. But
I'm going to say that you can't put him in that category yet, because I think that this season, the only Stafford we've seen is a Stafford without Kenny Golladay. And last week he had Kenny Golladay, and immediately they connected. It was like a switch turned on. So you pair in Kenny Golladay with the deep threat of Marvin Jones and whatever Quintez Cephas is going to be, and maybe even the Hawk in there at some point. And I think you've got a top 10 quarterback. And
I think
not
we just
only
got to
that,
get Patricia out of Detroit, and then we'll see the real Matt Stafford.
maybe the Jets and the Lions can switch coaches, and you can get
No.
Adam Gase.
I'd rather not.
oh no,
There's Jim Bob Cooter again. Bring back the Cooter.
Bring him back.
oh no.
Lions could get Le'Veon low key. They need a running back.
I think they could have used him.
Yeah, I expect a big game from Golladay.
Yeah, agreed. And my
Big
last
game
point to
there.
that is I was just going to say that I for whatever reason, in my mind, Jacksonville, I still picture the 2016 Jacksonville defense. That was just like this next level defense, and they're really not that anymore. So I agree, and I think Stafford's a great start this week. So look for another touchdown to Kenny Golladay. Put some money on Kenny Golladay scoring this week. Believe me. All right, I'll go next. I got my start of the week. It is Jamison Crowder of the New York Jets. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that Le'Veon Bell is now recently departed of the New York Jets. And even last week, I was a little apprehensive going into last week, I won't lie, because Joe Flacco was their quarterback. And I wasn't sure what he was going to do. He's been kind of in and out of the league for a while. But he didn't miss a beat. He went right to Jamison Crowder for the whole entire game. Excuse me. It's actually the third game out of 3 that Crowder has played this season where he went over 100 yards receiving. He had his first game, he had 7 catches. Second game, he had 7 catches. Third game, he had 8 catches. And all of those, he went over 100, and he scored in 2 of those games. So he's just an easy start to me. And not to mention they're playing a weak Miami defense that allows the 13th most fantasy points to the receiver position this season. I just love the matchup. I think with the Le'Veon Bell targets gone, with Joe Flacco, who seems to trust Crowder, I think the stars are aligning. I think it's going to be a huge week for him.
I think Jamison Crowder has not gotten the respect he deserves so far this season. I saw the joke that Jamison Crowder was a poor man's Michael Thomas, and I think that just goes to show how many targets and receptions Jamison Crowder is pulling in, because, oh my gosh, he is – and PPR leagues, receptions alone, he is destroying. And then you add on the 100 yards to the scoring, and then you've got a wide receiver 1. And I think we can consistently expect that out of him now, because whether it's Flacco or Darnold at quarterback, Crowder is getting the ball, and only Crowder is getting the ball in this Jets offense. And especially this week, I think he's going to smash.
Yeah, definitely. I have him in a few leagues too. I'm super stoked that I got him. I think in the 8th round and lower in every single draft. So definitely a steal. It seems to me like Crowder is the only piece of the whole organization that is working right now. So with Le'Veon Bell gone, I mean, not that they overfed Le'Veon at all, really, but I think it's the Crowder show from here on out. I will tell you, though, 2 weeks ago against Denver, I did see Adam Gase call a designed wheel route to Frank Gore. So Frank Gore, that was one of the funniest moments I've ever seen. But other than Frank Gore possibly stealing some targets, it's going to be the Crowder show there.
Yeah, not much I can add to that. I just listening to those stat lines that you provided, Zach, just is in the 5 catches on a week by week basis alone would be a reason to start him. But the fact that he has 100-yard games and he's scoring and he's getting those extra points really says something. And he might be a
Lagging just a little bit here.
Yeah. We'll see if he kicks back in. I guess I'll just wrap up and we'll move on. Uh, as far as Crowder goes, I think that we're seeing him revert to the old Washington days when he was Alex Smith's favorite receiver, and even it might have been someone else before Alex Smith. Actually, I don't even quite remember who was there at that point when he was the favorite target. But I think that that's a little bit what he's returning to with his time in New York now. So, Dante, can you hear us? Okay. Nope, clearly not.
Oh, there we go.
All right, well, we'll get him back in. That's not a big deal. Let's just move on to our sits of the week, and we'll cycle back around to Dante for his too. Hopefully, if we can figure some things out. So, Kyle, give me your sit of the week.
My sit of the week is Mark Ingram, one of the running backs in the Baltimore Ravens organization, because this is an extremely split backfield. Mark Ingram in this whole season, his highest snap percentage has been 42%, and the past 3 weeks hasn't risen above 32. He is not on the field enough to produce, and his only fantasy relevant games are week 2 and week 4 when he had a touchdown. Before that, he hasn't passed 10 points, and he faces a rougher, I say rougher, but it's just semi-rough, Philadelphia rushing defense. But he's a very touchdown-dependent guy, and touchdown-dependent guys, I personally don't believe belong in a starting lineup unless you're truly desperate. But if I had the option, I don't think I can start Mark Ingram.
Yeah, Mark Ingram for me right now. I'm lucky that I don't have him in any leagues, but I think borderline he's a flex play at most. I would not feel comfortable with Mark Ingram being my RB1 or RB2 that I had to play every week. So maybe a flex play, but until something happens with that team where they honestly show that they have a guy besides Lamar just taking off running the ball and Andrews in the red zone, I don't trust a touchdown-dependent back. I believe Dante's frozen again.
It looks like it. Dante's having some technical difficulties. All right. But, yeah, just to tag along with that, I think that the Ravens running game today has been – or this season, rather, not today – has just been lackluster at best. I think it's been all over the place in terms of who's getting the carries, the meaningful carries, inside the 10-yard line, inside the 5-yard line. And I think that it's just not a game that anyone really wants to play right now. But aside from that, the Eagles actually rank in the top third of the league in points allowed to running backs. So I don't think that that's a game that we really want to play. So it's a stout defense. It's split backfield. I'm out for this week. So I like the sit, Kyle. All right, Mike, go ahead. Who is your sit of the week?
So I'm going to go ahead and sit Melvin Gordon this week. Unless you absolutely have to play Melvin Gordon, go ahead and play him. But I would avoid him for 2 reasons. One, Phillip Lindsay is back, and they're playing a New England Patriots team that is top 6 in least amount of points allowed to running back. So it's not the best matchup for Melvin Gordon. I know that the offense kind of revolves around running the ball and that play action to get their receivers down the field a little bit. But with Lindsey back, I think he sees more action in the passing game, and I think that that's what they lean on this week against New England. 2, I don't really want to make this political or anything, but it's very concerning that the NFL will fine players more for marijuana and enhancement drugs and stuff like that, but they won't get guys or punish guys for DUIs and stuff like that. I just find that a little bit weird to me. I don't know what you guys think about that, but who knows what's going to happen with that? Maybe the NFL does step in before game time or later this week, or maybe even the Broncos themselves. But if he does somehow end up playing, definitely try to avoid him this week.
Yeah, I was trying to look when I saw you had Melvin Gordon on your sit. I was curious if there was any punishment, and so far it's just they're trying to figure out within the organization if they will. But he's practicing and he's gonna play. But I kind of agree with you that he probably won't touch my lineup, whether it's game time decision if he's gonna play, or this really good patch run defense and the return of Philip Lindsay, and it's three factors, and it's kind of a three-strike rule for starting players. There's more than three factors, or more than two factors, really. If you should sit them, you might as well just sit them, and that's kind of what you're facing with Melvin Gordon.
Dante, are you with us? Can you hear us okay? Guess not right now. All right. But yeah, in terms of Melvin Gordon, I for anyone who doesn't know, I'm actually a teacher, and one of my students is a huge Broncos fan, and I love talking Broncos football with him every single week, just because I usually like to kind of crap on him for how bad his team is. But we were talking today, and I said, like Mike said, how unbelievable is it that it's just a slap on the wrist if you get a DUI where you're potentially putting other people's lives at risk. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, if you are smoking marijuana in your own time, you can look at Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon is like the NFL's most wanted. Okay, and I just think that it's a really, really kind of interesting dichotomy to look at the two things, but not to get too far off base. But in terms of Melvin Gordon, I agree with the sit. I think that with Philip Lindsay coming back, I think against I'm sorry, who do they have this week? I'm so sorry.
New England.
New England, yeah, against the stout New England defense. I just don't think it's a great matchup. So I like the sit this week, Mike. So all right, let's continue on. Myself, I picked what I'll admit to be a little bit of a gimme for my sit of the week. I picked Travis Fulgham of the Philadelphia Eagles. If you aren't familiar with the name, he's the breakout wide receiver. They signed him off of a practice squad, I believe, and in the last couple of weeks, he's put up some monster stats. I say, to the tune of, let me see. He had two catches for 57 yards and a touchdown last week against the Niners defense. And this past week against an even better Pittsburgh defense, he had 10 catches for 152 yards and a touchdown. Now, I don't think he's a one-hit wonder. I think he's going to be around to stay. I think that Wentz has found his new, dare I say it, Alshon Jeffrey, and new, younger kind of type of receiver, but not this week against the Baltimore defense. The Ravens have given problems to a lot of good offenses this season. Take, for example, the Chiefs a couple weeks ago. We saw some down numbers from Patrick Mahomes in that game. So I think that this week is a good week to sit Fulgham, but that doesn't mean looking ahead that he's a sit for the rest of the season. I think that next week against a weak Giants defense, he could bounce right back.
Well, I agree with you that he's coming off of a huge 31-point PPR game, and I don't think you should expect that from him for the rest of the season. But you never know. The NFL is kind of crazy with points, but it depends on the situation. I don't think I could look at Fulgham and say he's a complete sit, but if you're in a league where you've got DK Metcalf and Keenan Allen and they're both on buys and you're kind of struggling with the wide receivers, I wouldn't bat an eye at looking at Fulgham and being like, all right, yeah, I could play this week.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like every other player situation based. But I kind of see where you're coming from. I could see why I wouldn't want to play Fulgham, but I feel like sometimes situations kind of force your hand, and I would probably be comfortable playing Fulgham. I don't see why he could not put up 20 points or 15 like he did 2 weeks ago. But at the same time, we could potentially see Deshaun Jackson return, and he could put up 2.
Mike, before you get started, I just want to butt in quick. I messed up. I messed up a player in there. I said that against the Ravens defense, Patrick Mahomes didn't do anything. No, that was not the truth. He put up 48 points in fantasy against the Ravens defense. I was looking for Deshaun Watson and more recently Joe Burrow. Both of those guys have had great seasons, but got killed by the Ravens defense. So Carson Wentz, who isn't having a very good season, and I don't necessarily know is in that elite tier with Patrick Mahomes, I think that those guys can struggle. So just wanted to clarify that. So
Right. Yeah. And I want to say I do agree with the sit. And I also agree with Kyle, too. It could be a situation where he really does take over as a starting role. I was seeing rumors today that going forward, he might be the starting X receiver over Jeffrey. If that's the case, yes, I think he sees higher volume, but I also agree with Zach, and I'm siding with him on he's playing the Ravens defense this week. And if anything, I think the Eagles try to get the ground game going, and if that doesn't work, maybe they'll venture off and maybe Fulgham sees 10 targets. But like I said with Ingram, I think it's a situation where, like Kyle said, if you have a lot of buys this week and you have to play somebody, yeah, then maybe he's a flex option this week. But I wouldn't get ballsy and play him over any solid guys in there. Not this week.
Yeah, I think if you've had guys in your lineup last week, I don't think I would be like, all right, I want to play Fulgham above this guy, unless you're playing AJ Green. But I think if you're steady at wide receiver and nobody's gone or hurt on bye week, I think you're chilling with Fulgham on your bench.
yeah, I will say one good plug-in is if you have DK Metcalf, you have Tyler Lockett on a bye this week. Great start for Fulgham there. But otherwise, like Mike said, you're not playing him over any of your solid week-to-week starters. Let me pose a question to you guys. Let's talk about two waiver wire darlings from last week. If you manage to get, in a perfect scenario, Claypool and Fulgham, for those of you who don't remember, Claypool had 4 touchdowns last week. Fulgham had 2. Fulgham was a little more productive yardage-wise than Claypool. But which of the two would you prefer to start this week moving forward? Just for your own reference, the Steelers have
The Browns this week.
The Steelers have the Browns and the Eagles have the Ravens. So which of those two would you prefer?
Go ahead, Kyle.
I would go Claypool. I personally had Claypool on a couple teams, but I unfortunately dropped him on a big one prior to this week, but I was mostly expecting him to play against Tennessee last week, and that clearly didn't happen. Because I see Claypool is their deep threat, and after this past week, he seems to be the guy that they want to get involved anywhere and everywhere on that offense. So I think Claypool is definitely a better option than Fulgham. I'm still wary about putting him as a wide receiver 2 on the Pittsburgh team, but I think I'd be more comfortable with Claypool going forward and this week, especially against the Brown. I think that's going to be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say for this week, I think if Deontay Johnson, even if he does come back and end up playing, I would still go with Claypool over Fulgham. I believe Fulgham. I would just say because of the matchup. I know that divisional game is going to be very high scoring. It's going to be a dogfight to the end. So I think that they saw the playmaking ability in Claypool. So I believe that for this game, yes, that I think that I would go with Claypool this game. Rest of the season, however, I think it's more of a closer conversation. If Fulgham actually is going to be the starting X receiver, then I'm probably leaning towards Fulgham. But for this week and this week only, definitely Claypool.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm on board with that. I think this week it's strictly a matchup-based thing, but I think that Fulgham is building himself up to be more of a consistent receiver for the rest of the season, whereas I think with Claypool, you're going to see shades of a Deshaun Jackson, where you're going to have these massive 170 yards, 2 touchdown games, and then maybe you're going to have a week where he's 2 catches for 50 yards or something along those lines. And it's probably going to be infuriating as a fantasy owner, but when you hit, he can probably win you a week by himself. So that's kind of where I'm lying. So, but for this week, I would agree Claypool. Okay. All right. So anything else to add?
All good here.
No, yeah.
All right. Well, that was another week of, first and foremost, hide and seek with Dante. But that was another week of starts and sits. So hopefully we can get Dante squared away with his internet connection, and hopefully we'll be okay moving forward. Just to kind of touch on his real quick, his start of the week was Mike Davis. Mike Davis of the Carolina Panthers, he's been a super hot target lately in terms of receptions and in terms of just really taking on this huge role for the Carolina Panthers in the wake of Christian McCaffrey's absence. And I think it really speaks to him and how strong of a player he is, just because he's been able to fill that hole completely seamlessly. And he doesn't have his sit down for the week, but Dante mentioned that his sit of the week was actually going to be the Bills defense, which is a little bit of a different one. The Bills are a pretty consistent start every week, but this week against a very tough matchup with it's going to escape me. With the Chiefs. Yeah, the Chiefs. Okay, that's obviously a pretty clear sit. So not to mention that is one of those good old weird Monday night 5 o'clock games. So so you guys want to speak to either of those at all?
I'll speak on Mike Davis really quick. Weird, kind of crazy stat. Mike Davis has only played in 3 games this season, and he leads the league in forced missed tackles by 2 or 3 over Kamara, and I believe number 2 is David Montgomery. So that's absolutely crazy to me, considering he's only played 3 games. So you got to start him every single week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Mike Davis is, without McCaffrey, he's a RB1. I'd say, honestly, probably top 5. But I'm maybe with McCaffrey coming back, we might have to reevaluate that. But I think Davis is smashing, and it's hard to argue sitting the Bills defense against Kansas City. That's not a hard decision.
Yeah. Last thing I'll add is I think that after their smack on the wrist last week from the Titans, I think that the Bills are going to go back and reevaluate some things, because they did not do too hot this Tuesday night football against the Titans. So, all right, I think that's all we got. That was our starts and sits for week 6. For Kyle and Mike and Dante, who was once here. I'm Zach, and we'll see you next time.